Welcome back to Sailboat Ads, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Chapter 4. Today, we're going to look at blue water cruisers. And, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of blue water cruisers for sale in the market. So, how do you pick them? Well, my personal bias based on when I was a kid, I loved swans, always loved swans. I grew up in the UK, and my dad and I would go down to Earl's Court, which is a great big venue where they did all kinds of stuff. I saw the Rolling Stones there and a couple other bands, and they used to have their boat show, not in the water, but in Earl's Court, and they'd bring in these massive boats. And Swan was always one that would bring in, at the time this would have been 60s, late 60s, early to mid 70s. Um, their 36 was popular, their 37 was popular, and of course their 65. I don't think they ever brought the 65 in, but I was always shocked at the size of the yachts that some of these manufacturers would bring in. Anyhow, we could never afford a Swan, and frankly, it was a little bigger than my dad was interested in, kind of owning and maintaining. But it was super interesting to go in there and look at the astonishing attention to detail, the incredible joinery work, very, very traditional, but also beautiful, beautiful yachts. They just always looked amazing on the water. Anyhow, so one of them is going to be a Swan, and I'm just going to do two today because I don't want this to run 20 minutes. And then the other one's going to be an ML, which is, got a great reputation for deepwater cruiser. Obviously, there are many, many other uh, outstanding brands out there that are making 40 to 80 footers. Anyhow, so we are going to start with this Swan. This is a 53 from 1989, and I purposely picked this one because it's a little bit cheaper. It's not a super expensive boat. 350,000 they're asking. 1989 obviously has got some miles on it, but this is just a stunning. To me, this really harkens back to the beautiful designs they had in the 60s and 70s. Even though this is almost a whole generation along, but it has beautiful shears. Their cabin tops are quite thin and modest, and then they have just these great stripes that just make everything work. In my humble opinion. So let's take a look at this one. So 350,000 Don Treader 5 is hull number 25 of 50 Swan 53s, built over an 8-year time frame, making this model one of the most popular knot tours ever built. 3 sleeping cabins. I'm not going to go into all this description because one thing I'll say about when you get this level and quality of boat, the descriptions get very, very thorough, as they should be, because you're talking about small house money. Previous owner were avid Swan enthusiast, having owned a Swan 38, and the current owner's personal situation is motivating the sale. I hate to hear that. I hate to read that, because that means the guy's fallen ill, something else bad has happened in their life, and they've spent a ton of money on this boat, as we'll get into it here. So it's leisure furl in boom furling, new main, unused, which just says everything, right? They bought a new mainsail, not a trivial investment on a boat this size, and they can't use it. New teak and holly floorboards, major overhaul of the engine completed off the boat, which is interesting because if you look at the specs up here, it doesn't say what the power is, and I couldn't find it anywhere in here actually. Later, we find out that it's a Westerbeek engine, which has a good reputation, and that the hours are effectively new because it has been completely rebuilt. So that's awesome. So you're getting a really, really solid engine, but you don't know what power it is. I'm sure it's adequate because Swan would not have put something like that. Removal and resealing the keel. Cannot imagine what kind of job that was. You'd have to completely lift the thing, undo the keel bolts. Wow, what a job that would be. New batteries, new electric macerating head. If you don't know what a macerating head is, basically there's a little motor in there that chews up the bad stuff as it's going through, which chops it up into little tiny bits, and until you don't have solids in your holding tank. Hull, keel was moved from the boat, resealed and refitted in 25. The list of upgrades just in the last couple of years is really a little sad that they're now selling. Teak overlay on decks replaced in '05, so those are 21 years old at this point. And again, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. There's a lot of detail in here. Deck hatches, opening ports, Genoa tracks. I am going to pick out some of the good stuff. We have a mix of winches, which is a little unusual. We have some Andersons, electric. We have a couple Lumars, which are manual. And then we have a couple really big suckers. These 72s are, they're going to be the size of a tree trunk. Those are also electric. And then you also have a couple more electrics, so we wouldn't want to actually turn a wind channel if we don't have to. Four-peak, forward head, guest cabins. Let's see if there's anything of particular interest in here. Nav station is awesome. We're going to look at the pictures here in a sec. Master cabin also has a brand new electric macerating head. Westerbeek diesel engines removed from the boat, underwent a major rehaul, zeroing the hours in 2025. Plumbing, ventilation. So this boat is primarily a 110 boat. The other boat we're going to look at is not. It's a 220N 110. Looks like a relatively healthy genset. We have a great electronics suite. So let's get into the pics, because there's a lot of pictures on this boat. And I'm just going to do the scroll down thing. So I love these. Giant front hatch. Love that. And you have a separate smaller ventilation hatch, which is a great idea. These are going to be over your main salon. Great idea. Beautiful teak, as they should have. Manual furler, whereas the next boat we're going to look at has electric furlers. Nice dorade with a stainless steel protector around it. And actually, let me just click into these and we'll do it more like a slideshow. One of the things that I love about big boats is everything is supersized, right? So the rigging, the winches, the Genoa cars. Here's pretty sure these are the 72s. Those are probably worth 25 to 50,000. I haven't shopped for winches like that. So the Swan has an interesting layout. It actually has really two separate cockpits. It's got kind of a line handling cockpit, and then it really has where you steer and hang out. And interestingly, you cannot get from here down below without stepping over this section, and there's a nice big heavy duty stainless rail to help you, and then you'd step down your companionway. But and this probably isn't a place where you would hang out. This is where you would control your main sheet and your jib sheets, which is what these two giant winches are for. So it's an interesting layout. It's a little different, a little non-traditional. It does obviously have a full bimini. Here are your engine controls, a nice screen that looks like 12 to 13 inches for your chart plotter. Lots of pictures of the of the cockpit. 3-spreader rig. It is aluminum, not carbon. Here you get a sense of the scale of the hardware here. It's just massive. And in my brain, just the dollar signs are going off. If you ever had to replace that stuff, it'd just be, those things are so expensive when they get to that size. Here's your leisure furl. It's brand spanking new. Doesn't look like it has any wear on it at all. I'll talk more about in boom versus in mast. And then we go below and we have a really good tour, a really logically laid out tour, because some of my, the point of my channel is to criticize ads, and this one's pretty hard to criticize. So this is way forward in the forepeak. Behind that is the head. So here's your 444 peak, way forward, so basically a storage space. And then to me, it makes a lot of sense to put the head next. You're going to have full standing headroom here. There's a little bit more space than if you're up, right up against the bow. This looks like it does not have a separate shower stall. Looks like you're going to use the wand off of the sink. And then you have double bunk berths just aft, which I think is a genius solution. It's not very intimate if you've got couples who want to sleep together, but it's a great solution to put a lot of bunks. They're probably very comfortable. You do have ventilation overhead. They're separated by a bulkhead down the center, and all four people have access to this head, which is dedicated to them, which is a really nice arrangement. The berths look plenty big. You have and you really get a sense for the quality of the fit and finish of Swans in these pictures. Just everything fits, looks pretty. This is a 37-year-old boat, and I mean, look how this is held up. Obviously, it's been well taken care of as well, but the quality of the materials is outstanding. Then we move into the main salon. So you've got a centerline settee and then an outboard settee with a massive table. There's another little cushion here. You have what feels like kind of dead space. I'd love to see what's underneath here, what is actually inside those cabinets. Great nav station, and then your galley is basically in the passageway to the aft cabin. Yeah, and you can easily get 8 people around this table. Might not be able to put plates down for 8 people, but and again, just the quality, the finish work, just outstanding. When I first looked at this, the floor looks amazing because it's basically brand new. It's done last year. So this space, just curious, could we have done something better with that? But it was a decision by the designer 37 years ago. And look at this nav station. This is a huge, big seat, great electrical panel, and we're going to get a little bit closer here. Old school dividers. Obviously, there's space for flat paper charts. Surprised to see that there isn't a screen down here to look at your your GPS and your chart plotter and that stuff. Old school rocker switches. That's kind of cool. Kind of feels like an old Jaguar. And then you get into the galley side. Fantastic stainless steel counter here with a double sink. Massive amount of space. A really first class. I can't tell if that's a 3-burner or 4-burner with an oven. I'm guessing this is cold storage. They don't have. This is probably actually a fridge freezer would be my guess. Old school foot pumps for hot and cold water. That's cool. And then you get into what's really a beautiful master cabin. The blue, I think, is just a classic color. I'm not sure I would see the need for these curved settees on both sides. Do you really need 2 of them? But maybe that could have been better suited for something else. This hatch right here actually goes into the aft cockpit where the steering wheel is. And this is the master head, which here we're looking back into the master cabin. And then there's our Westerby, which is definitely looking very fresh. Hoses, clamps, all that stuff all looks brand spanking new. And here is our generator with a big old cover over it. So those are the pictures. That's what you get for $350. If I had $350,000 rattling around, I would be all over this thing. So here's our ML55. These are made in France. And here we're pushing $1 million, and I specifically picked this price point because I knew we would move up substantially in terms of just modernity. This boat just took a massive price hit. It was at 1.1. And this is, I mean, the description here is absolutely, it's like a small novel. So full 110 volt as well as 220. Basically, you've got all the electrical infrastructure to go anywhere in the world, which is kind of cool. Definitely not going to read through all that. But the very first line item is this espresso machine. So that had to have been important to somebody. A Miele microwave, Force 10 3-burner, butane tanks. If anybody know what you'd use a butane tank for, is that just another term for propane? I don't know. Bosch dishwasher, the best. Seagull drinking water filter. I mean, this thing is absolutely loaded to the gills with options. LG washer, an even bigger set of electronics and navigation, and they itemize what's available in the cockpit as well as what's available in the nav. You also have entertainment, and it looks like just an absolutely wicked sound system. Then there's the details around your electrical system. I mean, this really is a go anywhere boat worldwide. Lots and lots of house battery, and it does have a couple of solar panels, 400 watts, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but probably enough to keep your batteries topped up. You have a Volvo D3 with 110 horse with 834 hours, which doesn't sound like very much for an 8-year-old boat. That says to me they are doing a lot of sailing, and they are not doing a lot of motoring. So deck and hull, they get into a lot of details. Painted in 2024 with 3 coats of Coot Coat. Propeller was coated with prop speed, which is, by all accounts, the best solution for props. Chain counter, dinghy davits, cockpit cushions. I mean, they really get into the details here. All Harken winches with a couple of electric primaries. All your sails are original, which is to say 8 years old, not that bad, and a relatively new North spinnaker. OC330 carbon tender. These are just the coolest little tenders. Incredibly stable. They're made in New Zealand. I've seen a fair number of YouTube videos about them. Honda 15 horse. All right, let's get into the pictures because we are running long. I'm not going to do the video. It is a very, very pretty boat, and it's an interesting boat because it is both a ketch. So there is a main mast, a mizzen mast, and it is also a cutter. So there's a stay sail as well as a front sail jib. So this boat has in-mast furling as opposed to in-boom furling. Pros and cons, obviously, either way. The problem is that if your in-mast furling jams, you could very well have most or all of your sails still up. Where if it's in boom, less likely for that to happen, and easier to mechanically get in there and hand roll it down, whereas you really can't do that in the mast. The other criticism is that this is putting a lot of weight aloft, whereas if you're in the boom, obviously your weight is down low. So, pros and cons either way. If it was my boat, I definitely wouldn't have in-mast furling, but I'm guessing it works pretty well. There are a number of very, very beautiful kind of Chamber of Commerce shots of this boat. So here's the interior, completely different kind of feel. It's not teak, it's not that dark wood. This is a light oak interior, and one has to wonder how this is going to, in terms of style, how it's going to do over the years. Much, much brighter interior. You have windows on your cabin, you have hatches overhead, and then you also have these windows that are lower down in the hull. This is just this is a brighter interior all the way around. This is also fairly significantly bigger boat. It's about a foot beamier and a couple, 3-4 feet longer on the waterline. So there's more interior volume. So here, when I first went through these, I thought, oh, well, that's the master. That's not bad. It's not as nice as the Swans, but that's not bad. Well, of course, this is the VIP cabin, which is, wow. I mean, if this is where your guests were staying, can't imagine this is a bad place to hang out. Nice overhead ventilation. Obviously, a couple of fans there. The quality of the fit and finish, it's good. Is it as good as the Swan? I don't think so. It's pretty. I would love to see what this boat looks like in 37 years. I'm guessing it's not going to be quite as nice as the Swan, although it's still a ton of money. You're looking at very close to $1 million for this. Great layout. I like the layout here. The space that's opposite the table. This to me is a much better use than the Swan has. There's their nav station in roughly the same relative location. But instead of those cabinets, we have a couple of very nice reading chairs. My wife likes to sit and read. They obviously have a little library with them. She would enjoy this much more, than sitting in the main settee. Another fantastic nav station. And here you do have your chart plotter permanently mounted. That looks like, again, a 12 or 13. Great electrical panel. A view outside, which the Swan did not have. This galley, U-shaped, nice. Here is your Miele, no, this is the Bosch dishwasher. And then, in terms of galley, I would say it's roughly comparable. It was Miele microwave, wasn't it? Roughly comparable to the Swan. Swan's, in alignment. This is athwartships. I'm not sure which I would prefer. But lots and lots of storage in a boat this size, you would expect that. These are odd steps. They're very artsy-fartsy. Then as you head aft, you do have a single berth on the one side. That's a great sea berth. Easy access to getting up on deck. I'll bet it's got a lee cloth. There's probably something that clips in there, so if you're on a heel. And then, wow, look at this aft cabin. This is spectacular. Full walk around. Massive, full, legit queen bed. I would guess there's full standing headroom here, and maybe not quite underneath here, but at that point you're climbing in anyhow. Huge storage in back here next to your lights as well. The whole thing lifts up on struts, so you can stick stuff underneath it. It's obviously a pedestal. Just lots and lots of space in here. Very, very elegant. The light oak is, it's very pretty. It's just not kind of quite as classic. This is much more of a sort of Euro finished. Then we get into their head. They do have a separate shower. That looks like an EPIRB. Their electrical panel close up, and then we get into the utilities. So Volvo engine. Onan generator, yeah, Cummins, Onan. That looks like a compressor unit for refrigeration. Your engine is actually sitting right here, and this is the shaft going out of the boat. Reversal oil change system, that's a cool little feature. And then here's your Volvo diesel. This looks like it's fairly cozy. Inventory of fluids. We have 92 pictures. I'm going to, we go up on deck. So this has Reckman electric furlers, 2 of them. So that's a very expensive upgrade compared to doing any kind of manual furler. And they're great. They have a spotless reputation. As long as they work, once the thing stops working, oops, then you got a problem. Also note, solid stainless lifelines, guardrails. It's hard to call them lifelines because they're not lines. Anything else that I wanted to show you on deck? Oh yeah, we gotta look at the cockpit. So this is a factory option, full hard Dodger, permanent. Obviously this is not a canvas Dodger. Fantastic protection in all weathers. This would be a great place to hang out in really kind of any weather. There is an enclosure here. Nice table, which is out of the way when it's folded down. This would be a very, very pleasant place to hang out. There's your engine axis right there. That's actually a really important picture. You can see how the whole table tilts up with it. Kind of bummed you don't have a dual seat. Be nicer to have space for a friend. And here's all your electronics. Just fantastic layout for deep water cruising. This boat has been to both Alaska and Hawaii and is on the west coast. The Swan is on the east coast in, I think, the Annapolis area. So I'm not going to go through all those because actually you get to the bottom of the slides and they are all the different places this yacht has been, and some are pretty spectacular. Although this is a good one. This shows how the basically you turn a standard stern application into a sugar scoop with steps down and a swim platform. It's a handsome looking boat. It almost has a reverse shear, meaning that there's a little hump here. It doesn't sweep bow to stern with a dip in the middle. But it's a very good looking design. Hard to fault the aesthetics of this versus the Swan, although obviously I'm biased. Great picture there with the mountains in the back. So, like I said, there are some real Chamber of Commerce photos here. Obviously, now we're in Hawaii with their, and this is interesting because we have staysail, we have furled jib, and we have, no, that's probably they've got a separate spinnaker that they can fly off the bow. So there's a giant spinnaker there as well in light air. So I'm guessing this boat sails extremely well. This is a beauty. So takes your pick. Would you rather have a Swan Classic 1989, little older but a lot less money for $350,000, or would you rather have a much newer ML55 for very close to $1,000,000? And of course, you're really talking about apples and oranges here, based on the price point. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoyed it. The channel seems to just be starting to get a little bit of traction. Would love to have some more subscribers, more views, and really looking for feedback. What do you guys want to see? Do you want me to go to different parts of the world? Are there particular categories of boats that you'd like me to look at? Obviously, we can look at deep water cruisers forever because there's so many beautiful yachts out there, and up. If we went to $2 and $3 million, we could look at truly lifestyles, the rich and famous. But anyhow, I think that's it for today. Let me come back to my ugly mug. Always a pleasure. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.